Welcome back for another deep dive with us. It seems like everyone's always talking about time management these days.
Always.
But today we're not just talking about, how to squeeze in one more task or color code your calendar.
Right.
We're going way deeper.
Yeah.
We're exploring the whole idea of time itself through this really fascinating book by Oliver Burkeman.
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
It's called 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals.
Just the title alone, 4,000 weeks, kind of makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
Definitely. It's like, whoa, that's it. That's all we get.
Right. It really puts things in perspective,
Mhm.
Makes you realize how limited our time on this planet really is.
And it's funny because we're all running around like crazy these days, feeling busier than ever.
Oh, absolutely.
But are we actually getting more done? I mean, I even saw this article where researchers were trying to do a study on busyness, but they couldn't even find enough people to participate
Really?
because everyone was just too busy.
That's wild.
You know, right?
But it kind of proves Berkman's point, doesn't it? This feeling of not having enough time is everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like a hallmark of modern life.
We're drowning in to-do lists.
Totally.
Constantly trying to optimize every single minute.
Like, we've all bought into this hustle culture thing
Oh, yeah.
where being busy is like a badge of honor.
It makes me wonder, though, like, hasn't it always been this way?
Mm.
I mean, haven't people always felt pressure to work hard and get things done?
That's a great question.
Like, is this really a new thing, or have we just gotten better at complaining about it?
Well, Berkman actually takes us back in time to look at exactly that.
Oh, interesting.
He looks at how people experience time in pre-industrial societies.
Okay.
Specifically, he talks about medieval farmers who lived without clocks or schedules.
Wow, so no calendars, no deadlines. It's kind of hard to imagine, right? I mean, how do they get anything done? Like, crops don't just harvest themselves.
Exactly. That's the point. Their lives revolved around tasks, not time. So instead of thinking, I have an hour to do this, they'd be like, okay, I need to milk the cows now.
Right, it was all about what needed to be done.
Exactly. And they just did it when it needed doing.
So it's like they lived in a perpetual now, just focused on the task at hand.
Yeah. Berkman actually calls this deep time.
Deep time.
Yeah. It's about being fully present in the moment, where your sense of self kind of merges with the task you're doing.
Kind of like when you're so engrossed in a hobby that you lose track of time completely.
Exactly. Like time just ceases to exist.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, me too.
When you put it that way, it sounds so much more peaceful than our modern way of life.
It really does.
So when did things change? Like, when did we lose touch with this whole deep time thing?
Well, Berkman points to the invention of the mechanical clock as a turning point.
Oh, the clock.
It seems so simple, right?
Yeah.
But it actually had a profound impact on how we perceive time.
It's interesting because, those early clocks were mainly used in monasteries to keep track of prayer schedules.
Right. But gradually they started to spread to other areas of life.
And I guess it makes sense because once you can see time, you can start to measure it. And once you can measure it, you can start to control it.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get tricky.
Because then time becomes a commodity, something to be maximized and optimized.
Right. It becomes something we feel guilty about wasting.
And that's when the anxiety sets in.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of Berkman's central arguments.
Okay. What's that?
He believes this constant pursuit of control over time is actually what's causing so much of our modern-day anxiety.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a paradox.
The paradox. How so?
The more we try to manage time, the more limited and stressed we feel.
Yeah, I think I see what you mean.
It's like you become more efficient at work, but then you just get more work piled on.
Right. Or you finally achieve that perfect work-life balance, and then suddenly there's pressure to also be a marathon runner and a gourmet chef in your spare time.
Exactly. The goalposts just keep moving further and further away.
It's exhausting.
It really is.
So what's the solution?
Well, this is where Berkman takes a really fascinating turn.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
He brings in the ideas of the philosopher Heidegger, who had a completely different way of thinking about time.
Heidegger, okay, yeah, I've heard of him, but I'm not super familiar with his work.
Well, get ready to have your mind blown.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's do this.
So Heidegger basically argued that we don't have time, we are time.
Whoa, okay, that's a big one.
Right. It's a total paradigm shift.
So instead of thinking, I have 4,000 weeks, it's more like, I am 4,000 weeks.
Exactly.
That's deep.
It is. And Berkman believes this seemingly small shift in perspective can have a huge impact on how we live our lives.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
Instead of trying to manage and optimize every minute, we start to see that life is just a flow of experiences, each one precious and unique.
It's about letting go of that illusion of control.
Exactly. And embracing the reality of our limitations.
It's not about quantity, it's about quality.
You got it.
Okay, I'm with you so far. But I have to admit, a part of me is still wondering, like, wouldn't that lead to total chaos?
How do you mean?
If we just let go of trying to manage time, how do we make decisions, set goals, prioritize anything? Wouldn't we just end up floating aimlessly through life?
That's a common concern.
Yeah.
But Burkeman actually suggests that by surrendering to the reality of our limitations,
Okay.
we actually gain more clarity, not less.
Interesting.
We can start to focus on what truly matters in each moment.
Instead of constantly striving for some idealized future state that may never even arrive.
Exactly. It's a shift from living in our heads to living in our hearts, you could say.
I like that.
And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay, lay it on me.
Burkeman explores this idea that often the things that matter most to us are the very things we find hardest to focus on.
Really? Why is that? It seems counterintuitive.
He believes it's because those things, the things that truly matter,
Yeah.
often require vulnerability,
Yeah.
patience,
Right.
and a willingness to confront our own limitations.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
It's much easier to distract ourselves with things that offer immediate gratification.
Even if they ultimately leave us feeling empty.
Exactly. Like scrolling through social media for hours.
Oh, tell me about it. Guilty as charged.
For getting lost in busy work that doesn't really move the needle on our goals.
It's like we're almost afraid to face the things that are most important to us.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I guess because they might bring up uncomfortable emotions.
Maybe.
Or maybe we're afraid of failing.
Could be.
Or maybe we just don't know where to even begin.
All of that makes sense. I've definitely been there too. Like, procrastination's my middle name sometimes.
Oh.
But this is where Burkeman brings in some really fascinating research from a psychotherapist named Stephanie Brown.
Okay, what did she find?
She observed this pattern of what she calls speed addiction among her clients in Silicon Valley.
Wait, speed addiction? Like an actual addiction, but to being busy?
Exactly.
Yeah.
These were highly successful people, mind you, who just couldn't seem to slow down.
Even when they were exhausted.
Even then.
Wow, that's intense.
It is. And Brown actually compares it to other forms of addiction,
Interesting.
like where people use substances or behaviors to numb out uncomfortable feelings.
Right.
In this case, busyness becomes the drug of choice.
It's like they're running from something.
Exactly.
But what are they running from?
Well, often it boils down to those same things we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Vulnerability, uncertainty, the discomfort of facing our own limitations.
They're trying to outrun those feelings by constantly striving and achieving.
But it just creates this vicious cycle of anxiety and exhaustion.
It makes you wonder if all this striving is actually getting us closer to what we truly want in life.
Right. Like, what's the point of it all if we're not actually enjoying the journey?
That's such a good question.
And it's why both Brown and Burkeman emphasize the importance of surrender.
Surrender.
Not giving up on life, but surrendering to the reality that we can't control everything.
Oh, I see.
Letting go of that illusion of control.
And embracing the fact that things take time.
Exactly.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Especially in a culture that values productivity and achievement above all else.
Like we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us to hustle harder and never give up.
It's relentless.
So how do we even begin to challenge that?
Well, this brings us to another crucial concept that Burkeman explores.
Okay, what's that?
The idea of rediscovering rest.
Rest. Seriously, most of us are barely getting enough sleep as it is.
I know, right? But Burkeman is not just talking about sleep.
Okay, what is he talking about then?
He's talking about a deeper kind of rest.
A deeper kind of rest.
Yeah, a state of being.
Yeah.
Where we allow ourselves to simply be present in the moment.
Without striving or forcing.
Exactly.
So it's like an internal shift, a letting go of that constant need to be doing something productive.
You got it.
And he's also challenging this idea that leisure time always needs to be justified by its usefulness to work.
Absolutely. No more productive hobbies or vacations that are just thinly veiled work trips.
It's about doing things simply for the joy of doing them, without any need to achieve or accomplish anything.
Exactly.
I love that.
Burkeman actually gives a great example. Hiking.
Hiking?
Yeah, he calls it an atelic activity.
Atelic. What does that mean?
It means it has no specific goal or endpoint.
Oh,
You're not trying to get the hike done. You're just walking for the experience of walking, taking in the scenery, being present in the moment.
I can definitely see how that could be incredibly restorative.
It is.
You're focused on the process, not the outcome.
Exactly. And this brings us to one of the most thought-provoking ideas in the book.
Okay, hit me with it.
It's something Burkeman calls cosmic insignificance therapy.
Cosmic insignificance therapy. That sounds a little intimidating.
I know, right? It's a
That was
mouthful.
you.
But I'm curious.
Well, it starts with this idea that in the grand scheme of things, our individual lives are pretty insignificant.
Okay, I'll admit that's a humbling thought.
It is, but it can actually be incredibly liberating.
Liberating. How so?
Well, Burkeman argues that by acknowledging our cosmic insignificance, we can release ourselves from all this pressure to achieve some monumental legacy or make a giant impact on the world.
So instead of striving for some grand purpose, we're finding meaning in the everyday, the seemingly mundane.
Exactly.
It's about shifting our perspective from a narrow, ego-driven view of success to a wider, more accepting view of life.
Right.
Because when you think about it, the things that truly matter, love, connection, joy,
Yeah.
they're often found in the small moments, not in some grand achievement.
It's about blooming where you're planted. Exactly. Instead of trying to force ourselves to be something we're not, we accept who we are and make the most of the time and resources we have.
I love that.
Me too.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to get caught up in that feeling that we need to be constantly striving for something more, something bigger.
Absolutely. Our culture really pushes that narrative.
Like it's never enough to just be content with what we have.
Right. There's always this pressure to do more, be more, have more.
But Burkeman reminds us that embracing our limitations,
Yeah.
surrendering to the reality of our finite time,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about giving up or becoming apathetic.
It's actually the opposite.
It's about freeing up our energy and attention to focus on what we can control.
Our actions, our choices, how we show up in the world each day.
So it's recognizing that even though our time is limited,
Yeah.
our capacity for love, kindness, and creativity is not.
Exactly. That's where the true power lies.
It's in recognizing that we can make a meaningful impact within our own sphere of influence.
Even if it doesn't feel monumental or world-changing.
It's about finding fulfillment in the everyday, the ordinary moments that make up a life.
And ultimately, remembering that time is not something we possess, it's something we are.
We are a flow of experiences, a series of moments.
And the true gift is in savoring those moments, not trying to control them.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation, really.
I hear.
It's a completely different way of looking at time management.
Right.
One that focuses on presence, acceptance, and embracing our finite nature.
It's a beautiful thing.
It really is. But I have to admit, a part of me is still struggling with that idea of letting go of control.
It's tough, I know.
Like, it's so ingrained in our culture to constantly strive and achieve.
I totally get it. It's a process, a journey.
It's not about achieving some perfect state of Zen-like detachment, right?
No, not at all.
It's about becoming more aware of our own patterns and tendencies, those default settings that keep us trapped in that cycle of busyness and striving.
Exactly. And starting to gently challenge them.
So how do we do that? How do we actually start to shift those patterns? Like, how do we move from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance, especially when it comes to time?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And luckily, Burkeman actually offers some really practical advice in the book.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So let's dive into that.
I'm ready. One of the key strategies he suggests is to become more intentional about our choices.
Intentional, okay.
Instead of letting our days just get dictated by, external demands.
Right.
Or our own, ingrained habits.
Yeah, those pesky habits.
We can start by asking ourselves the simple question.
Okay, what is it?
What is the most meaningful way for me to spend this moment?
What is the most meaningful way for me to spend this moment? I like that.
It's a powerful, right?
Yeah. Instead of just reacting to whatever pops up in our inbox or on our to-do list,
Exactly.
we're taking a moment to pause
Mm-hmm.
and consider what truly matters.
It's a shift from reacting to responding.
Oh, I like that. Reacting versus responding.
Yeah, and it's not about becoming some kind of productivity guru.
Right.
Or trying to optimize every single minute of our day.
It's about being more mindful, more present.
Exactly. It's about aligning our actions with our values
Yeah.
and making conscious choices about how we spend our precious time.
That makes a lot of sense, but I think one of the things that holds us back from making those conscious choices is this fear.
What kind of fear?
Like this fear that if we're not constantly striving and achieving, we're somehow failing.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's like we're so conditioned to believe that our worth is tied to our productivity.
Right, like we have to constantly be proving ourselves.
Exactly.
And that's where that idea of cosmic insignificance therapy can be really helpful.
Okay, remind me again, how does that work?
Well, once we accept that our individual lives are just the tiny blip in the grand scheme of things, it can actually be incredibly liberating.
Because it frees us from the pressure of having to leave some grand legacy behind.
Yeah.
It's like we're not here to save the world, we're here to experience it.
And to connect with each other.
To make a difference in our own small ways.
Exactly. It's about finding fulfillment in the everyday.
In the connections we make, the experiences we have, the small acts of kindness we offer.
And recognizing that those seemingly small things can actually have a ripple effect.
A ripple effect.
Yeah, creating positive change that extends far beyond our own immediate sphere.
It's a beautiful thought,
It is.
that even though our time is limited, our capacity for love and kindness and creativity is not.
I love that.
Me too.
Right.
And that's ultimately the message of hope that Burkeman leaves us with, right?
Absolutely.
By letting go of the illusion of control,
Mm.
by embracing our limitations.
We can actually unlock a deeper sense of freedom and purpose within our 4,000 weeks.
It's like we're being invited to step off the treadmill of constant striving
Yes.
and step into a more spacious and intentional way of being.
Exactly. And that's where the real magic happens. Yeah. When we stop trying to force things, when we surrender to the flow of life, we open ourselves up to a world of possibilities that we never even knew existed.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is, and it's not always easy, but it's definitely worth striving for.
I don't know about you, but this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
It's not just about changing how I manage my time. It's about changing how I view my entire life.
That's the power of a book like 4,000 Weeks, isn't it?
It really is.
It challenges our assumptions, expands our perspectives,
Yeah.
and invites us to live more intentionally and authentically.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Okay, I'm listening.
What if, instead of asking ourselves, how can I get more done?
Yeah.
We asked ourselves, what is the most meaningful way for me to spend this moment?
That's a good one.
It's a subtle shift.
Yeah.
But I think it has the potential to make a world of difference.
I agree. It's all about changing our focus.
From quantity to quality.
From achieving to being.
From striving to surrendering.
Beautifully said. It really is all about changing our focus.
It's like instead of trying to cram as much as possible into our day,
Yeah.
we're choosing to be fully present in the experiences we actually have.
It's like savoring each bite of a delicious meal
Ooh, I like that analogy.
instead of just gobbling it down without even tasting it.
Right. It's about slowing down
Yeah.
and appreciating the richness of each moment.
Exactly. And another thing Burkeman talks about,
What's that?
the importance of accepting that we can't do everything.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
It is, but it's also incredibly freeing.
How so?
Well, when we let go of that need to do it all,
Mm-hmm.
we can start to focus our energy on the things that truly matter to us.
The things that align with our values, our passions, our purpose.
Exactly. And that's how we start to create a life that feels both meaningful and fulfilling.
So it's not about doing less.
Right.
It's about doing the right things.
The things that bring us joy, the things that make a difference.
And the things that help us connect with our true selves.
Beautifully said.
Well, I've learned a lot from this deep dive, that's for sure.
Me too. It's always good to revisit these ideas.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of everyday life.
I know, right? It's like we forget what really matters sometimes.
But books like 4,000 Weeks remind us to step back,
Yeah.
to take a deep breath.
And to remember what's truly important.
So to all our listeners out there, I encourage you to pick up a copy of 4,000 Weeks
Yeah, it's a good one.
and really take some time to reflect on these ideas.
Think about how you can apply them to your own life.
Because in the end,
Yeah.
it's not about how much we accomplish in our 4,000 weeks.
It's about how we choose to spend them
It's about making each moment count.
and creating a life that feels both purposeful and joyful.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it as thought-provoking and inspiring as we have.
And until next time,
May you find peace and purpose in each and every one of your 4,000 weeks.
and may your days be filled with joy, meaning, and connection.